I was never paranoid. I've always been a logical person, someone who trusts data more than vague feelings. I work as a programmer. My routine is predictable, and my small apartment in the city center has always been a quiet refuge. But a few weeks ago, I started noticing small things out of place. At first, they were insignificant details. My toothbrush seemed to be at a slightly different angle. The glass in the sink wasn't exactly where I remembered leaving it. Small things, easy to ignore. Maybe I was tired, maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but then came the smells. A perfume I didn't use. The scent of fresh coffee, even though I hadn't made any that day. At first, I tried to justify it. Maybe I had forgotten some detail of my own routine. But the feeling that something was wrong only grew. One day, when I got home, I noticed the window was slightly open. I never leave the window open, ever. My building is secure, the door is always locked, and no one else has a copy of my keys. At least, that's what I thought. Something inside me started screaming that this wasn't normal. I decided to test it. I placed a small piece of tape between the door and the frame before leaving for work the next day. When I got back, the tape was on the floor. Someone had been inside my apartment while I was gone. I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. This wasn't just my imagination anymore, this was real. Someone had access to my apartment. My first thought was a break-in, but nothing was missing. My laptop, my wallet, even small valuables were untouched. Whoever it was didn't come to steal. They came for something else, but what? Or worse, why? That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the old wood floors, every distant sound from the hallway made my pulse race. I kept my bedroom door locked, though I knew it wouldn't help much if someone really wanted to get in. The next morning, I called my building's landlord. He swore up and down that no one else had a key. I pressed him any past tenants, maintenance staff. He hesitated but assured me that only I had access. That didn't sit right with me. If no one had a key, how was someone getting inside? Determined to catch whoever was doing this, I took things a step further. I bought a cheap motion-activated camera online and set it up in the corner of my living room, facing the front door. If someone was coming in, I'd have proof. That night, I triple-checked the locks and went to bed, anxious but hopeful I'd get answers soon. The next morning, I checked the footage with shaking hands. I fast-forwarded through hours of nothing, just the stillness of my apartment. But then, at 2:43 a.m. into screen, glitched slightly. A few seconds later, the front door creaked open. My stomach dropped. A figure stepped inside, moving with an unsettling familiarity, as if they belonged there. I expected a stranger, some intruder I could report to the police. But when the figure turned toward the camera, I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. It was me, not someone who looked like me, not a blurry resemblance. It was me, down to the same t-shirt I had tossed into the laundry pile the night before. My own face, expressionless, moving through my apartment like it was the most natural thing in the world. I watched, frozen, as my duplicate calmly walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and then disappeared out of frame. The footage ended abruptly, as if the camera had been turned off. But I hadn't touched it. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. This had to be some kind of mistake. A glitch, a hallucination. I forced myself to reopen the video and watch it again, praying that I had imagined it. But no, the same thing played out. The door opened and I walked in. Not just walked in, moved around like I belonged there, like I had done it 100 times before. I checked my phone for any calls or messages during the night. Nothing. I even searched my apartment, my hands shaking as I flung open closet doors, looked under the bed, and checked the locks again and again. Everything was in place. No signs of forced entry. But someone or something had been inside while I slept. And worse, it had my face, my body, my movements. I felt sick. This wasn't just a break-in. This was something else. Something I couldn't explain. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. My mind was spiraling, replaying the footage over and over in my head. There had to be a rational explanation, maybe some kind of deep fake. But no, the movements were too natural. Maybe I had been sleepwalking? But then how did I leave and lock the door behind me? I had no history of sleep disorders. No history of anything like this. I sat at my desk, gripping my head, trying to think. Then a terrifying thought hit me. What if it wasn't the first time? What if this had been happening for weeks or longer, and I had only just noticed? The small changes, the displaced objects, the unfamiliar scents. Had I been sharing my apartment with myself this whole time? I rushed to check the rest of my security footage, but every single file was corrupted except for that one clip. It was like something didn't want me to see more. I felt trapped in my own home. Every shadow in the corner of my eye made my skin crawl. Every noise made me flinch. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, even though I was the only one there. At least I thought I was. I needed to know the truth. If this had happened before, maybe it would happen again. So I set up more cameras, one in the living room, one in the hallway leading to my bedroom, and another hidden inside my closet. If it came back, I would see everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, phone in hand, watching the live feeds from the cameras. Hours passed, nothing. The apartment was silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then, at exactly 3:12 am, my phone screen glitched. A faint sound came through the audio feed, a soft click. The door unlocking. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the screen. The front door opened, and I stepped inside again. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stare at the screen in horror. My double moved exactly like me, same posture, same hesitant steps. It walked straight to the kitchen, just like in the first video, but this time it did something different. It turned its head, slowly, as if it knew I was watching. Then, with the same blank expression, it walked toward my bedroom door. I shot up from my bed, my whole body trembling. I could hear it now, soft footsteps outside my room. My door was locked, but that suddenly didn't feel like enough. I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, ready to defend myself. My phone slipped from my sweaty hand, but I barely noticed. The handle of my bedroom door rattled once, then again, and then silence. I stood there, gripping the lamp so tightly my fingers ached. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then, slowly, I lowered myself to the floor, pressing my ear against the door. Nothing. No footsteps. no breathing, just stillness. I didn't know how long I stayed like that, frozen, waiting for anything to happen. Finally, I forced myself to move. I grabbed my phone and, with shaking hands, opened the camera feed again. The screen flickered before the image stabilized. My breath caught in my throat. The front door was wide open, and I was gone. I couldn't move. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The door was open, but I hadn't heard it unlock, hadn't heard it close again. The other me had just left, vanished into the night. But where had it gone? Where did it come from in the first place? My body was locked in place, every muscle tense, waiting for something else to happen. After what felt like forever, I forced myself to stand up. My legs were unsteady as I crept toward the front door, still ajar. The hallway outside was empty, silent, like nothing had happened. I stepped forward and hesitated. What if it was still nearby, watching, waiting for me to follow? I slammed the door shut and locked it, double-checking every bolt, every chain. But the security felt meaningless now. If it had a way in, nothing I did would stop it. I sat on the floor, back against the door, trying to catch my breath. My mind was spinning. This wasn't just some break-in. This wasn't some stranger messing with me. This was me, but that was impossible. I knew it was impossible, and yet I had seen it. The way it moved, the way it seemed to know my apartment like I did, it wasn't just some look-alike. It was me in every way that mattered. I checked the camera feeds again, hoping for some kind of clue, some proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But the footage ended the moment my double stepped out the door. Just like before, every other file had been corrupted. It was like something was erasing the evidence, leaving just enough to make sure I knew it was real. A cruel joke, a warning. I didn't know which. I didn't know anything anymore. I stayed awake until dawn, every muscle in my body tense, waiting for anything to happen. But nothing did. No more sounds. No more footsteps. Just the eerie, crushing silence of my apartment. When the first hints of sunlight filtered through the blinds, I finally moved, standing up on shaky legs. I needed answers. I couldn't keep sitting here, waiting for it to come back. The first thing I did was check the locks again, even though I knew it was pointless. Then I stepped outside, looking up and down the hallway. Empty, normal, as if last night had never happened. My neighbors went about their mornings, oblivious. I thought about knocking on someone's door, asking if they had seen anything, but what would I even say? Hey, have you seen another version of me walking around? They'd think I was insane. Hell, maybe I was insane. But I needed proof, something solid that didn't just exist on corrupted files and fading memories. I decided to check with the building's security. There were cameras in the hallways, outside the entrance. If it had left my apartment, it should have been caught on one of them. I made my way downstairs, trying to act normal, like I wasn't on the verge of a complete breakdown. The security guard barely looked up from his phone when I approached. Hey, I think someone might have been in my apartment last night, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Any way I could check the hallway cameras? He sighed, clearly annoyed, but pulled up the footage on his monitor. I watched as he scrolled through the night, fast-forwarding. My stomach clenched as we got closer to 3 a.m. Then there it was. My apartment door opening. I leaned in, every nerve in my body on fire. Come on, show me. But the hallway was empty. No one walked out. The door just opened and then, after a few minutes, closed again. Weird, the guard muttered, rewinding it. Maybe a glitch? He glanced at me. You sure someone was in there? I felt my stomach drop. A glitch? No, no way. I had seen myself walk out. I had watched it happen in real time. But here, on the building's security feed, the door simply opened and closed on its own, as if no one had been there at all. My hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just someone sneaking into my apartment. This was something else. Something worse. Yeah, I muttered, forcing myself to sound casual. Must have been nothing. The guard shrugged, already losing interest, and I stepped away from the desk, my heart hammering in my chest. I needed to get out of here. I needed fresh air. I left the building and walked aimlessly, my mind racing. If the cameras didn't pick up anything, then what did that mean? Was I hallucinating? Losing my mind? Or was there something in my apartment that wasn't meant to be seen? I wandered the streets for hours, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. I kept replaying the footage in my mind, the door opening, the empty hallway, but I had seen myself leave. It wasn't just a dream or some sleepwalking episode. It was real. And if the cameras didn't pick it up, then... What? Was it something only I could see? Or worse, was it something that wasn't supposed to be recorded? Eventually, exhaustion pulled me back to my apartment. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it again, that wrongness. The air was different. The atmosphere felt off, like I had just walked into a stranger's home instead of my own. I checked every room, every corner, but everything was exactly where I had left it. Nothing had changed. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I didn't trust my own space anymore, because if it could come and go as it pleased, then what was stopping it from being here right now, watching me? I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag, just the essentials. Clothes, my laptop, my phone charger. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Not when I felt like a stranger in my own home. As I zipped up my bag, my fingers hesitated over my keys. The thought of leaving my apartment felt wrong, not because I was scared of what was inside, but because deep down, I had this sickening feeling that I wasn't supposed to leave. Ignoring that thought, I grabbed the keys and slung the bag over my shoulder. But the moment I stepped toward the door, I froze. The air shifted. It was subtle, like the room itself had inhaled. My skin prickled with a sudden wave of dread. Something was here. I turned my head slowly, heart hammering. The closet door, the one I had checked just minutes ago, was now slightly ajar. I stared at the closet, my breath caught in my throat. It had been shut. I knew it had been shut. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I hadn't closed it all the way. Maybe the air pressure from the door moving had nudged it open. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I took a slow step forward, gripping my keys so tightly they bit into my palm. My body screamed at me to run, to get out, but some sick part of me had to know. I reached out with a shaking hand and yanked the door open in one quick motion. Empty. Just my clothes hanging, my old sneakers on the floor. Nothing out of place, nothing at all. But the dread in my gut didn't fade. It got worse. because as I stood there, staring into the closet, I noticed something in the mirror across the room. The reflection wasn't empty. I couldn't breathe. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. The closet itself was empty, but in the mirror's reflection, I wasn't alone. There, just behind me, inside the closet, stood a figure. Not a shadow, not a blur me, my own face staring back, expressionless. But there was something wrong. Its eyes were slightly off, too wide, too dark. Its mouth was closed, but I could feel it smiling. A silent, knowing smile. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, locked in place by pure terror. Slowly, too slowly, the figure in the reflection tilted its head. I didn't move. I hadn't moved. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized it wasn't mirroring me any. My body finally obeyed the pure, primal terror ripping through me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My eyes stayed locked on the mirror, on it, as it stood there, still tilting its head, still watching me. And then, without warning, it stepped forward. But not in the mirror. The sound of fabric shifting, of slow, deliberate movement coming from inside the closet. I felt the air change, felt something shift behind me. My breath hitched. I wanted to turn, to run, to do anything, but what if it was closer now? What if it was right behind me? I didn't dare look. I couldn't, because some deep, instinctual part of me knew. If I turned around, if I acknowledged it, I might not be the one walking away. I did the only thing I could. I bolted. I didn't look, didn't hesitate. I sprinted out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me, my hands shaking so violently that I struggled to lock it. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I pressed my back against the cold hallway wall, waiting, listening. Silence. The door didn't move. No footsteps followed. But I knew something was still in there. And worse, it wasn't just in there, it was me. My stomach twisted as a horrifying thought sank in. If I had just walked out, then which one of us really belonged inside? I didn't go back. I left the building that night and never returned. I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if it stayed there, if it's still living my life in that apartment, moving through my routines like nothing ever happened. But sometimes late at night, I get this feeling, like I'm being watched. Like somewhere out there, I'm still looking for a way back in.